18 months ago, we set out on this journey because we understood that AI is one of the most important technological forces in the world, and we wanted to embrace it with full force. So before I dive into that, let me give you a little bit of context on who I am and a little bit of context on our company. I like to say that I was in AI before it was cool. I took a degree in AI in 2010. That's 15 years ago. People did not realize that AI was actually a degree. That was at Edinburgh University, where Jeff Hinton also took his PhD. I then moved on to start a data science consultancy, and I worked with data science for many years, both as a data scientist myself and as a data scientist manager later on. And then in 2017, I fell down the rabbit hole of crypto. I learned about Ethereum, and I went all in. I moved from Barcelona to Hong Kong, and I joined a crypto startup there. To make a long story short, that didn't go very well, but I ended up founding Nansen as a result in 2019. And just so you have a bit of context on the company in terms of the size and who we are, we're a Series B stage company. We are around 80 people. We have people across 30 countries, remote first, and we've raised $88 million from investors such as A16Z, Accel, GIC, and many others. Now, why do we exist? Why does this company exist? We believe that every asset will eventually be tokenized. That means it's going to be on-chain, on a blockchain. And as a result, billions of people are going to become owners. In other words, we believe in a future that is the opposite of what the World Economic Forum tells you, that you will own nothing and be happy. We believe you will own something and be happy. And blockchains are going to become the new financial fabric in this world. This is our vision. This is the world we want to create. And our role in it is to help on-chain investors and also on-chain builders surface the signal so that we can help create winners. This is basically the master plan of our company. If we can help them do that, they will reinvest into the industry, we will get great products, great infrastructure built, and the future of finance becomes a reality. That is why the company exists, and that's our mission. Now, like I said before, we believe that AI is one of the most important technological paradigm changes, and the other one is on-chain. I don't think I have to convince you that much on AI, and I won't spend the time convincing you on on-chain either, but let's start talking a bit more about AI. 18 months ago, we set our AI aspiration to be that we want to make this company an AI trailblazer in two ways, both for product innovation and also for organizational productivity. As a company, that means it's going to be harder for others to keep up with us, and also as individuals in this company, we will be better equipped to thrive in this future. And so if we start with the product side, where we've made quite a lot of advances in the last year, there are three essential pillars for the product strategy and how we think about AI. Number one, we have a deep data moat. So for those of you who don't know our product, essentially what we do is help on-chain investors figure out what's happening on blockchains in real time across any chain that they care about. And an important point here is that you need to understand what the different addresses are. If you just get data from a public node or a blockchain, you won't know what the different addresses are. And with our product, we've labeled addresses. In fact, we've labeled about 500 million addresses with entity information, behavioral information, etc. And essentially, we are the best in the world at doing this. So this is the first part. And we use AI, and I'll show you an example of that afterwards, to do this job. We also want to create fast and fluid interfaces. And I use the photo of Harrison Ford from Blade Runner because there's a scene when he talks to his TV and he's panning in, zooming out. Maybe you've seen the movie. And we want to create a similar user experience with Nansen. You can talk to the data And in 1 second, you can answer things that would otherwise take you hours of research. And finally, personalization is a big component. We want to make sure that when you explore blockchains, you get personalized alpha. You get personalized information based on your portfolio and your preference. And so let me show you one of these examples in action. Deep research on wallets. If you look up an address, you paste in any address, a blockchain address, into our product. You go in, Command K, search bar, paste in the address. You get an overview of the address. But sometimes we might not have that much information about the address, and that's when you can click the new Deep Research button. Literally what this does is it sends out a team of AI agents to investigate what the address is. And after a couple of minutes, you get a report. It might be a little bit hard to read. In this case, I've looked up the Donald Trump meme coin deployer, and you get a summary of what this address actually is across lots of different dimensions. We look at what it's doing on chain. We look at mentions on the web. We look at mentions in code repositories on GitHub, and so on and so forth. Mentions on social media. And then the agent team forms a committee and gives a confidence score about what we know about this address and gives you all of the background and research that they've done over those minutes. And so this is what it looks like in the product, right? You go over, you click the deep research button, and you get this full report, a TLDR at the top, an executive summary, and then you get deeper information on lots of different dimensions. It's pretty cool, and we launched this in the product last week. We also have a research agent that's powered by our MCP, Model Context Protocol, which means that you can bring Nansen into ChatGPT, into Claude, and so on and so forth. And this is going to launch next month, and I'm extremely excited about it. Now, I said I was here last year talking about how we made our team AI native. So let's shift gears and talk a bit about the organizational aspect, which maybe is more relevant for many of you. Last time I was here, I talked about how we used a weekly survey to measure each individual's time spent with AI. The concept was that becoming AI native is a little bit like learning a new language or going to the gym. If you just show up and do the work, the results are going to come. And we spent 5,000 hours in the first quarter, we spent 6,000 hours in the next quarter, and maybe now you understand why this talk is called 30,000 hours. I would estimate that over the 18 months, we spent far more than 30,000 hours collectively working with AI in different ways. And let me share a little bit about what we have changed since last year. So one thing we have changed is we used to do a survey-based approach. We just asked our employees with a Slack form, how many hours have you spent with AI? Which tools have you used? And which use cases did you use it for? So it's very much trust-based, but it works for a company our size. Now we actually look directly at the tool usage. And so this is a chart that shows how much our engineers use Cursor. And as you can see, every month, pretty much, we spend more time using Cursor. Our engineers at this point spend an incredible amount of time with Cursor. And I think the whole engineering and coding experience has radically transformed for the team. Another shift we've made is to look not just at inputs, but also the outputs that are created. And so some stats here. On a monthly basis, we have more than 1 million lines of code edited or created by AI. Of course, that's not the best metric if you're an engineer to be measuring on its own. We have 38% of our pull requests be reviewed, approved, and deployed by an agent. So it gives a confidence score of how complex the pull request is, and if it's not too complex and it can do it without any intervention, it approves it and auto-deploys it into production. And as a result, we've reduced our median lead time for change by 95%. So those of you in the audience who are familiar with DORA metrics for engineering, productivity metrics, you will probably recognize lead time. This is basically how much time it takes from when you start fixing something or creating something to seeing it in production. We also have Claude code living in our Slack. And so this might be a little bit hard to read, but essentially, someone brings up that this button is probably placed in the wrong place. And I say, yes, it should be at this other place. And one of our engineers invokes Claude Code. Claude Code understands the thread, goes out, creates a pull request, another agent approves it, and now the button has been moved from the right part of the screen to the left part of the screen. And so when we first did this, I was very happy because I felt I could take credit for that code change, being the one who proposed the solution. So prepare for a world where CEOs will take credit for new code changes in your code base. We've also moved from output to outcomes, right? And if you think about productivity, we're in a very special place right now in Singapore, where you've seen a remarkable journey in GDP per capita since the 1960s. And we think about productivity at a very large scale in a similar manner for our company. What is our GDP per capita, or what does it look like? Over the last 18 months since we started this journey, it has tripled. When I say GDP per capita here, I mean annual revenues per head count, but that is effectively the same as GDP per capita. And so how did we do it? Well, we have some AI principles for organizational productivity. And these are pretty basic. Number one, try AI first. If you have a problem, you try AI first. Surprisingly, this is something that is not very intuitive for people, but you should always try AI first. Make AI a team member. You just saw Claude Code. You have to make sure that the AI and the agents are present where the rest of the human team members are. And that's also the third principle. And fourth, you have to proactively make sure that the team upskills on AI. I don't think you can rely on training top-down. Upskilling, I think, is a better word because it means people take more responsibility themselves in order to use AI tools and get familiar with them. But maybe the most important thing that I think everyone has to do is to build an AI culture. You might know the quote, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast," and I deeply believe that to be true. Culture is incredibly important, and making sure that you create a work environment where the default is that you work with AI is incredibly important. I think we live in a world now where you have a bimodal AI nativeness distribution. Lots of companies are laggards. They are fearful of AI, they're worried about security risks and so on, and you have a small bell curve that's very AI native, that's really just accelerating in their use. And you have to think about which of those two bell curves you want to be in on that scale. So, it's all culture. It always has been. Thank you very much.